Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, September the 6th. We'll focus in on the tropical situation right now. Lee strengthened during the past 24 hours or so into tropical storm status, quite likely to become a Category 1 hurricane later today. Right now, its maximum sustained winds are at 65 miles per hour, so not far away at all at the threshold to become classified as a Category 1 hurricane. It will encounter increasingly favorable conditions for intensification over the next few days. I believe it will not only reach major hurricane status by the upcoming weekend or during the upcoming weekend, but it could actually go all the way up to Category 5 status over the next few days. It is in an area where the wind shear is diminishing as a result of strengthening high pressure ridge, upper level high pressure ridge over the central part of the Atlantic Ocean. Very well could become a major hurricane by the weekend, and again it has a chance to reach all the way up to Category 5 status. Here's the latest look from the satellite imagery loop. Very healthy looking storm, a symmetrical storm, again on the verge of classification as a Category 1 hurricane. These are the Lesser Antilles Islands right here. This is the Caribbean Sea to the west of the Lesser Antilles Islands, Haiti and the Dominican Republic right here, Puerto Rico right here. It looks like this system will move in a west-northwest direction over the next few days to a position right here to the north and east of the Lesser Antilles Islands by or during the upcoming weekend. It will bypass the Caribbean Sea to the north and east. Again, very likely to continue to move in the west-northwest direction to this position here in a few days. After that, not quite so clear as to the track it will take. It looks like ultimately it takes a turn to the north, and right now most computer forecast models suggest it will stay away from the U.S. East Coast, but it's too close to call here. This far in advance, we've certainly had situations in recent history where computer forecast models tended to curve it away before ever reaching the U.S. East Coast, but that ultimately did not happen in a few cases. For example, Hurricane Florence at this stage was forecasted to turn away from the U.S. East Coast. It ultimately made its way all the way into the Carolinas with some tremendous rainfall. Irma, just 5 or 6 years ago, also at this stage, this far in advance, was predicted to move away from the U.S. East Coast by computer forecast models. Not only did it move farther west, but it moved all the way into the Florida Straits, right in this region right here, and ended up having a significant impact on Key West, Florida. So certainly way too early to write this off as a system that will not make it all the way to the U.S. East Coast. By the way, this is another healthy tropical wave that exited the west coast of Africa during the past couple of days. It very likely will become a tropical storm as well over the next few days. Well, let's focus in on the European model. This is the ensemble run of the European model from last night, the 0Z ensemble run, and all the ensemble member storm tracks for Lee. This, again, quite a consensus that it continues to move in a west-northwest fashion over the next 2 or 3 days or so to a position to the north and east of the Lesser Antilles Islands. Again, it looks like it will bypass the Caribbean Sea. These are very warm waters here, in some cases near 30 degrees Celsius, which is plenty able to support intensification. In addition, the wind shear relaxes tremendously over the next couple of days. And very likely a major hurricane by the time it reaches this part of the Atlantic Ocean. Again, I think it could make it all the way up to Category 5 status. Then it takes a turn to the north. Now, whether that takes place right here or farther to the west, still a little bit unclear. Certainly, some of these ensemble members present a threat to New England here. Later next week, we're talking about maybe the mid to latter part of next week, but it's shifted a little bit west on the European model in the overnight hours, and we'll, of course, continue to monitor this closely. Again, at this stage, in just the last 5 or 6 years, we had a couple of major hurricanes that ended up going farther and farther to the west. So it's something we will closely monitor. By the way, this is the second tropical system that just now is moving off the west coast of Africa. That looks like that'll turn way before it ever gets close to the U.S. East Coast and end up over the North Atlantic. Well, this is another interesting map from the 0Z run of the ensemble version of the European model. It shows a specific time. This is all the way out to next Saturday, September 16th, and where the surface low pressure system, MSLP, mean sea level pressure system, will be at that particular time. So we're talking about the end of next week. And the point I want to make here is quite a variation. We have some ensemble members have the system way up in the northwest Atlantic. Others hold it to the farther to the south and west. It's certainly dangerously close to the Mid-Atlantic, the New England coastline here to have any kind of comfort right now. So again, quite a variation. We're still a week to a week and a half away from potential hit in the Mid-Atlantic or the northeastern part of the U.S. So again, quite a variation. Look at far ahead means we have to continue to obviously closely monitor the situation. This is an interesting map I posted yesterday at arcfieldweather.com. It's still there on yesterday's posting. For storms, major hurricanes that travel through this point, this latitude, longitude just to the northeast of the Lesser Antilles, where this system looks like it will go, these are those major hurricane storm tracks going back many, many years. And certainly many of them do turn to the north and avoid the U.S. East Coast, but just as threatening, perhaps, there are several that made it all the way at least to the Carolinas, even some into the southern part of Florida. So it's certainly, we can't write it off at this stage. And again, these are tracks of major hurricanes that traveled through this point, avoided the Caribbean Sea, and then ultimately made a turn to the north. But exactly where that will end up for Lee, just too early to say. Well, let's stick with the ensemble run of the European model from 0Z last night. We're looking at the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast maps going forward. This is as we begin the day here on Wednesday, September 6th, and we'll talk about some of the major factors involved. And it's a very interesting weather pattern at the upper levels of the atmosphere right now for the latter stages of the summer season, the astronomical summer season that goes all the way up to September 21st. We have omega blocking, and by that I mean in the upper part of the atmosphere, the upper level winds take on the shape of the Greek letter omega, and that slows down the movement of upper level systems. Some of you may have heard about a tremendous rain event in Greece, for example. They happen to be under an upper level low, very slow moving. It's certainly not unprecedented to have an omega block, but what it will do, what kind of impact that upper level pattern will have on Lee remains to be seen. There's a possibility that because of the omega block, you get kind of stronger ridges and stronger troughs, and we may end up with a stronger couplet of a ridge over southeastern Canada and a trough over the Ohio Valley by the time Lee gets closer and closer to the East Coast next week. So things could change, is what I'm saying, over the next few days with respect to the 500 millibar forecast, and we'll have to watch the omega block situation here. So let's move forward here in time. And by the way, this is a reflection of 500 millibars of the remains of Idalia that of course hit Florida as a hurricane last week. Now let's move forward here. Unsettled weather returns to the Mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. beginning later tomorrow, continuing through the weekend as a trough kind of drops down to the South Andes. Then we get into the middle part of the weekend, and here, by the way, is the reflection at 500 millibars of what will probably at this particular time, midday Saturday, be a major Hurricane Lee. And again, it has a chance to go all the way up to Category 4 and even Category 5. Now, we move forward, and the concerning feature right here is this ridge over the Canadian Maritime Provinces, when you have an upper level ridge in this position, tropical systems certainly have a way to undercut that ridge and continue on a more westward track, perhaps threatening the U.S. East Coast. So this is kind of a concern right here as we get into the early part of next week. Again, we're using the European ensemble run from last night. Here we go by the middle part of next week. Here's next Wednesday morning, a week from right now. And these are the players involved here. We'll have a developing trough, it looks like, over the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes. At the same time, high-pressure ridging, one over the northwestern Atlantic and another over the Hudson Bay region of Canada. All the while, Lee is kind of slowly working closer and closer to the U.S. East Coast. We'll go out a little bit farther in time, and there's a possibility at this time that these systems may end up being a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit stronger of a couplet between a trough over the Ohio Valley and the ridge over the southeastern part of Canada. And this, again, is kind of a concern here because we do have some ridging showing up, at least on the ensemble run of the European model for the eastern part of Canada towards the end of next week. And again, oftentimes tropical systems can undercut those ridges, and certainly also depend on the interaction with a trough over the Ohio Valley, the eastern U.S. Sometimes they kick tropical systems out to sea before ever reaching the U.S., and once in a while they can kind of capture this system and pull it back to the west. It's just too early to write anything off here. Here we are all the way out to the end of next week, and still a reflection of Lee at this particular time in the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. And again, kind of a red flag here with all this red up here over eastern Canada, high pressure ridging that can in some cases help to push tropical systems farther and farther to the west, potentially impacting the U.S. East Coast. Well, now let's walk through the surface forecast maps from the European model. This is the conventional European model, not the ensemble run here. And we're just taking the North America view here, beginning the day on Wednesday. Here again, the remains of Idalia, which crossed over Florida and the Carolinas, kind of meandered, and now has worked its way up to the northwestern Atlantic Ocean here. Now, let's move forward here. Again, a very hot weather today and the next couple of days over the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. We'll have a frontal system slowly advancing into the eastern states, and that will stall out and cause an unsettled weather pattern later tomorrow, right through the upcoming weekend. Now, let's keep moving forward here into the day on Friday, and here is the reflection of Lee at the surface here as of late Friday evening. Very, very powerful system at this particular time. Very likely a major hurricane, and which is category 3 or above, and it could make it all the way up to a 4 or even a 5. These are the Lesser Antilles Islands right here, so it will not go over the Caribbean Sea. This is now Saturday. Very unsettled conditions continue over the eastern states here with stalled out frontal system, and continues to move all the way down now to a 947 millibar hurricane late in the weekend. This is now moving into Monday, 939 millibars here as of Monday. Now this is the time we'll start to see some ridging build up over eastern Canada. At the same time, a trough starts to try to develop over the Ohio Valley, and the interaction of that ridge trough couplet and Lee will certainly play a role in the ultimate storm track of this system. Here we are now all the way out to next Thursday, so we're more than a week away, and that's why it's way too early to write the system off from just shifting a little bit farther to the west here and having a potential impact on the U.S. East Coast. We'll go out a couple more days here, and here we go all the way out to next Friday. And this is a 957 hurricane right at this particular time, and so it's something we'll have to closely monitor certainly over the next several days. But again, we're talking about a slowing down of all the upper level features here, and this could not having an impact on the U.S., at least not a direct impact, all the way into the middle or latter part of next week. So plenty of time to go for things to change slowly. And it's still an evolving omega blocking upper level pattern that will ultimately dictate the final movement of Lee. So again, Tropical Storm Lee likely to become a hurricane over the next 12 to 24 hours or so, and then a major hurricane over the upcoming weekend, perhaps all the way to Category 4 or 5 status at some stage of its evolution. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Doria.